Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Jim Powers. I'm the editor for LakeForst-LakeBluff Patch. We're an online news website that covers the two towns, and I am extremely excited to be here. I was very happy to hear Mary Matthews extend an invitation for me to be here today and help co-sponsor this candidate forum, especially because it involves so many local people. And I think it's a great opportunity for voters to hear their stance on issues, ask questions, and take home some information you may not have had before. So please let me take this opportunity right now to present Jane Partridge, who is co-president of the League of Women Voters for LakeForst-LakeBluff Area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I am Jane Partridge, co-president of the League of Women Voters in LakeForst-LakeBluff. For those of you who may not know, the League of Women Voters is a national organization with over 800 local and state chapters. We are a political but nonpartisan organization. That means we do not endorse any candidate or political party. We try to educate voters and get them involved in the political process and the government. That is the best way to make democracy work. And by the way, the League just celebrated its 92nd birthday. Membership in the League is open to both men and women. We have a lot of activities throughout the year. If you are interested in government at any level, in public policy, or in being engaged in the political process, please think about joining us. We would love to have you. There are membership brochures by the entrance door, and our website is www.LWV.LFLB.org to get more information. Also, we would like you to support the League's work by making a donation to help offset the costs of these forums. There is a donation jar or a remittance envelope out front. We thank you all for coming. We're very pleased to be able to present this forum, which provides another perspective of the candidates, so you don't have to depend on their printed materials or TV ads. In addition, on our website, we have a voter guide, which is comprised of brief biographies provided by each candidate. This program is being videotaped by our friends at Lake Forest TV and will be shown on channels 17 or 19 and on our website and on YouTube. Now, let me introduce our moderator, Kathy Tate-Bradish. She is a member from the League of Evanston, and she will explain the rules and guide the forum. Kathy.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jim. Maybe if one of the mic guys could come up here and make this a little shorter for me. Okay, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here. I'm so happy for you that you have such an active league in your area. The League does a lot of great things, and of course the most important is because we're grassroots, we help you right at this level figure out what's going on in your community. There we go. Can you hear me better now? Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to just go over the rules. We don't have a lot of time for each of our fora today, and so I will be as brief as I can, but I want to make sure everybody knows how this has been handled and how we're going to handle it. So first of all, I used to say turn off your pagers back when I started doing this, but make sure you don't have anything that's going to go off and be making noise. Your candidates drew for speaking order. They will be given a minute and a half to do their opener. They have a minute to answer each question. They have a minute for their closing. They know that when the stop sign goes up, they'll just finish that sentence. We're going to get as many questions in as we possibly can. If you don't already, well, first of all, if you have a card, Think of a question, write a question on it. We have some that have been prepared by your local league and also by the patch, but we also want to hear from you. So if you have a card, write a question. If you need a card, put your hand up. If you have a question written, put your card up, and one of our ushers will come and get the card. What happens is it goes to the back to our sorters, and we're looking for several things. One is legibility, because I'm reading these things on the fly up here. One is appropriateness of government level. So, for example, something that has to do only with DC or international monetary policy, yeah, don't ask it. It might be of interest, but it's not for this level of government. We don't accept anything that's a personal attack, although sometimes there can be a specific question to a particular candidate, particularly when we have an incumbent, but the other candidate will always be given an opportunity to also answer that question. Please hold your applause to the end. We'll get a chance to applaud at the end of each of these races so we can move things along. And then let me tell you, we'll have a 5-minute break between each of the fora. The restrooms are straight out the door down, and the first ones you come to on the right, even though they say faculty, they're for the grown-ups. If you want to keep going, there are more, but they're a little bit smaller because they're for the elementary school children in, by the way, this fabulous green elementary school. So if I could ask our first two candidates to come up, Ms. Morrison and Mr. Sumption, and we will get started. Ms. Morrison drew the number 1, so she will give the first opener. Mr. Sumption will take the first question first, and it might seem odd to you. It's going to feel as though people are answering questions, 2 questions, 2 questions, 2 questions. The reason is we flip-flop, so each of them always gets a chance to answer a question first and a chance to answer a question last, rather than always being the person that says, you know, what she said or what he said. So we will start right now with Ms. Morrison's opener for 1.5 minutes.
I want to thank the League and everyone who helped organize this afternoon. It gives us candidates a chance to talk to you about the issues you care about and things that we want to speak about too. My name's Julie Morrison, and I'm a Democratic candidate for State Senate in the 29th District. Before the very first ballot is going to be cast on February 27th, I already know what the mandate is from the voters, and I think you all do too. Go to Springfield, fix it, get us back on track, and stand up for us. I have been a leader in our community for many years. For the past 14 years, I've been entrusted by the voters to manage a township's government, to balance its budget, to care for its neediest residents, and to find resolutions, often by building coalitions and building resources to our problems. I'm well prepared to take these skills, this experience, and my 100% dedication to Springfield to represent you and to be your voice. When I got into this race, I thought long and hard about the tremendous commitment it will be to be your senator, especially now with the state in such economic distress. I consider this a tremendous responsibility, and yet I stand here today with a promise to you that I will hit the ground running, I'll be a full-time legislator, and I will be a leader from day one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption?
Good afternoon. My name is Milton Sumption, and I am a Democratic candidate for the State Senate in the 29th Legislative District. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and everyone for coming out this afternoon and for sharing your time in the democratic process. I believe that we need good people with integrity and new ideas to go to Springfield. It's time for a change. For too long, the state has been fiscally irresponsible and mismanaged taxpayer funds and not funded the pensions. I believe we can do better in Illinois. I'm not satisfied that we have the worst bond rating in the country. I'm not satisfied that our economy lacks its potential. I'm not satisfied that we have mismanaged our state's resources. We need people with integrity and new ideas. We need a break from the past. My background includes 15 years of work in the private sector, working in finance and business. I've worked with pension funds and other institutional investors to manage their assets, monitor their risk, and improve their investment performance. I've worked with companies to raise tens of millions of dollars to help them create jobs. I'll take that experience to Springfield to create economic policy that will improve our economy, create jobs. I'll take that experience to Springfield and help us to better manage our budget, find a solution to the pension mess, and I'll take that experience to Springfield to restore integrity.
Thank you. And let me do a quick mic check. If I could ask both of the speakers to pull their mics closer.
Okay.
And then when we get started, let me see some waving in the back if we need them to adjust a little bit. Maybe you guys could also look. I've got the same situation, kind of a wonky mic placement here. Whoops. Oops, sorry. Thank you. Do that. Okay, we'll try this. So Mr. Sumption will take our first question first, and it is this, 1 minute. Do you favor the expansion of gambling, a casino in Lake County?
I've answered this question in a number of questionnaires, and I've said that I would have opposed the gaming bills that were proposed last year in Springfield. And the reason I would have opposed them is a couple of reasons. I don't believe that the state legislature did any kind of market study for those bills. And what was proposed, all the different gaming, including gaming here in Lake County, in my opinion, was far more capacity than this market could absorb. And I believe that had those bills passed and all the capacity would have come online, it would have not only hurt the existing properties, it would have made the new properties that would have potentially opened suffer as well. I believe we ought to focus economic policy on other industries that offer growth, including technology, healthcare, alternative energy. So I wouldn't have favored what was proposed last year. I'd be open to considering other proposals on gaming.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
Gaming obviously offers a new stream of revenue for maybe communities and states. I would first have every decision made on a site-by-site basis. The community that a casino in, for example.
Sorry, which is your mic? Which one is on? I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay. A casino needs to be placed in a community that has the will of the community to have it in, first and foremost. Secondly, I think there has to be tremendous oversight to make sure that we aren't getting the kind of corruption or bad neighbors that we want that can come in with organized gaming. And thirdly, let's figure out where we're going to put the revenue. I think revenue should be specified as to where it's going, and then it should be tracked very carefully. Lottery is a good example. That money was supposed to go for schools. It didn't. We can do a better job by monitoring that.
Thank you. Then Ms. Morrison takes this next question first. How do you plan to fix Medicaid? Do you support cuts to providers or cuts in service?
Not too long ago, I had an opportunity to sit down with Director Julie Hamas, who is the Director of Department of Health and Human Services, and we talked about Medicaid. Obviously, Medicaid is a huge budget item for the state. It's going to be a program that grows, and we have to figure out ways that we can make sure we control the cost and make it very, very efficient and effective. Fraud is one very easy way that we can begin to control that. Julie told me that when she sent postcards or mailings to all the Medicaid recipients in the state of Illinois, 6% came back as non-deliverable. That means those people didn't live here or had died or maybe had never lived here. That's a very good starting place for Medicaid reform.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption.
I believe, obviously, Medicare, Medicaid are important services that the citizens of the state need, and we need to figure out how to continue providing those services to the citizens. I think in terms of managing future Medicare, Medicaid expenses, healthcare costs are growing far too fast, and we need to figure out how we're going to manage those costs under those programs. A couple of things to do that. One is obviously eliminating waste and abuse. There are, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars potentially that we could save in terms of waste and abuse. Secondly, I think that we ought to look at the type of care that's being provided, and we ought to focus on wellness programs and other testing to make sure that people under those programs are staying well and avoid, not getting treatment when they need it, and then ultimately going to the emergency room. That's the most expensive care we can provide. So we need wellness programs.
Thank you. The timekeeper would just put it up there so everyone can see when the time is up. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's, yeah, thank you. Nobody runs over on purpose. On the other hand, I do the same thing. If I can squeak out a little bit of extra time, I'm always still talking when people want me to shut up. So, Mr. Sumption takes this next question first. Many elected officials have outside jobs which often provide a conflict of interest. Do you plan on being a full-time public servant, or will you keep another job?
I've given that some thought, and I believe that what I would, if I'm fortunate to be elected and get into the job, I believe I would do it full-time. I'm fortunate enough that in our family, my wife works, and I would be able to dedicate my full time to that. And while I know it's a part-time job, if you look at the demands of the state, the big issues that we face, finding a solution to the pension mess, fixing our economy and creating jobs, balancing the state budget responsibly, those challenges are huge, and they really require a legislator's full-time attention. So I would plan to work full-time in the position.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
I disagree with Milton that it's a part-time job. I think it's definitely a full-time job. That's the way I went into this race, and that is the way I will conduct myself if I'm elected.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison, what areas of pension funding would you reform, such as police, fire, teachers, and public employee pensions?
Pension reform is probably the question people ask me most when I speak to them at their doors or in groups. If we don't, I think everyone now realizes, all stakeholders, if we don't reform pension now, there won't be pension availability for those people who have already earned it. We're really at the breaking point. The viability of the system is absolutely in our face. I would, if I was a state senator right now and I had the power to, I would put the unions, I would put legislative leaders, I would put someone from the governor's office in a large room with no windows and one door. And I would have everyone sit there until they could come up with consensus. No one's going to walk out of that room happy. Everyone's going to have to give a little something, but we are absolutely a critical mass, and everything has to be on the table at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption?
With regard to the huge pension deficit, some estimated $86 billion. My first comment is I think it's egregious, I think it's sinful, I think it's immoral that the state legislature did not fund pensions year after year after year. And if I'm fortunate to go to Springfield, I'm going to stop that kind of irresponsible practice. It's just simply immoral. In terms of fixing, I think putting people in a room and locking them in there is not necessarily a solution. I think that we do need to sit all parties down. We need ideas from both sides of the aisle, and we need to come up with a long-term, a fair solution, both fair to the employees, as well as fair to the taxpayers, and we need a solution that's sustainable through all economic cycles. One of my proposals to find new revenue to fund the pensions would be public-private partnerships. And I've talked about this a number of different times. I think we can find public-private partnerships to help fund the pension deficit.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption takes this next question first. Do you support either an increase in the state income tax or a constitutional amendment allowing a graduated income tax as a partial solution to Illinois' pension funding crisis?
In terms of the state income tax, I'll make a couple of comments. One is I wouldn't favor any increase from where we're at right now. About a year ago, as I'm sure you're all well aware, state income taxes increased from 3% to 5%. I think that what was lacking in that measure was any kind of real budget cuts, and any rational, reasonable think tank or person will tell you that in order to balance a budget, whether it be state or federal, you have to have not only some increased revenue, but also meaningful budget cuts. So that bill lacked any kind of meaningful budget cuts. Secondly, it lacked any kind of mechanism to impose fiscal discipline on the state legislature, and we need that. We need some fiscal discipline. So going forward, I would propose that. In terms of a graduated income tax, I would support amending the Constitution to have a progressive tax system here in the state.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison?
I agree with a lot of what you said, Milton. We need to really rein in our budget. That's first and foremost. I have 15 years of experience in balancing a budget, and that's just discipline and priorities, and it's sticking to it. I would be in favor of looking at a graduated income tax. I think that's going to much more fairly balance the financial responsibility that the state of Illinois has gotten itself into.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison, I've just moved my mic. Is that okay with you guys back there? It's easier to face them. Okay, thank you. What are your top 3 legislative priorities?
Well, my first obviously would be jobs. I think the whole economy will improve once more people are back at work. And I have done some work in the township in a small way to try to do that. We brought together public and private groups. I did an employment clinic where we had a staffing agency, the Jewish Vocational Services providing job coaching, a Chamber of Commerce was present, and a Rotary who would provide assistance in paying for classes. We had CLC there, which was a really interesting partner for that day. There's skills that people can get from college, community colleges right now for jobs that are open today. We need to have relevant training for jobs that are open now. And I think that would be a very good first step towards employment. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption.
3 priorities. First, I would agree with Julie. Fixing our economy and creating jobs is critical. As I said earlier, spent over 15 years in the private sector in business and finance. I understand economic policy. I understand what's important to companies when they are looking at a location to do business and developing policies that will facilitate economic growth. So creating jobs and growing our economy would be a high priority for me. Secondly, imposing some fiscal discipline on Springfield. We need to get our budget balanced. We need to find a solution to the pension mess. And so imposing some fiscal discipline in Springfield would also be a priority. And then a third priority for me would be education. I'm sitting before you today because I've been blessed with a great education. And I believe we need to provide a great education to our children. They will need it to compete for jobs in the 21st century. So education would be a priority.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption, specifically, how will you help small businesses grow? What legislation can be introduced or resources expanded to do this? No cliches, please. I just read them.
Okay, well, I'll try not to use cliches, but I guess that's subject to opinion. It's interesting because I met with a small businessman back in January, and I asked him, what he needed, and one of his responses was exactly what I expected, and that's access to capital. Any person in the private sector will tell you that access to capital is critical for not only starting a business, but also growing it. And so identifying policies to create greater access to capital for small businesses would certainly be a priority for me. In terms of other policies, I would look at policies that would help open up new markets for our small businesses, domestically and internationally. We operate in a global economy, and we need to find ways to help them make that first sale to a new customer. So there may be some tax policies we could look at to incentivize potential new customers for our businesses here.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
Medium and small-sized businesses are the ones that hire and retain the most employees. It was great what happened with Sears and CME to some people, but are those opportunities ever given to the small employer, the medium size? I believe that Illinois can do a much better job at providing those same types of initiatives and incentives to smaller and medium-sized businesses. And my point that I just made about retraining and retooling, a small business owner that I spoke to recently said he had openings. He did not have the skilled labor here in Northern Illinois. We need to be speaking to the small and medium-sized business owners to see what those positions are now and will be around the corner, and start to redirect our training and our students to those jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison, should elected officials be allowed to hold two elected offices concurrently? Why or why not?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's a conflict of interest, or there's simply not the time to do it. I do know people who have done both, and in my opinion, they have done neither office the full credit that they should have. So I do not believe that is fair. And as an elected official now, I definitely would resign my position as township supervisor when I take the seat in the Illinois Senate.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I agree with Julie. I mean, I don't think that an individual should hold two offices. Obviously, there's a potential for conflict of interest, but also any office needs, any elected office needs that individual's full attention and full time to, I believe, operate effectively and serve constituents well. So I don't see any reason why anyone should be able to hold two elective offices. I think only one is, they should only hold one.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption. Illinois actually has lower corporate tax rates than surrounding states. So should the tax rate be lowered even more to attract business?
I think that that's an interesting question, because I think that the politicians and the policymakers in this state have been put on the defensive by clever CEOs and clever CFOs who have talked about all over the state and all over the country about how Illinois is a bad place to do business. I completely disagree with that. Illinois is a great place to do business. We are geographically desirable. We are competitive in terms of our tax rate. We have a lower tax rate than our neighbors in Wisconsin and Indiana. And we have a very talented workforce that's hardworking. And finally, we have world-class educational institutions to prepare workers for jobs. So I don't believe we need to lower the corporate tax rate. I think what we need to do is go on the offensive in terms of selling Illinois as a good place to do business. As I pointed out earlier, there are many good reasons for corporations to be located here, to do business here, and we need to do a better job here in Illinois as selling Illinois as a good place to not only stay, but also do business.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
This is a tough time. This is a tough one to come in second on, because I agree with everything Milton said. I think Illinois is a really good state to do business in, and we can do a much better job at letting the rest of the United States know. We have transportation. We have the lake. We are a hub for the United States. we do not need to lower our rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison. Utilities are currently often unresponsive. Telephone systems are hard to negotiate. Local offices are often not available. It is almost impossible to reach a human being. How could you improve matters?
Oh my gosh. I was one of those people, like I think a lot of you were, that lost our power. ComEd, what a disaster that was. I will say that our current representatives and senators have done a pretty good job, have taken ComEd to the mat. There are regulations. The state does have regulations over utilities, and we need to hold their feet to the fire and make them accountable to us, the consumer. It was absolutely ridiculous the way consumers were treated. There was no response time that was acceptable that I heard of, and a state senator should not have to be the one calling ComEd so that you can get your line reestablished. That being said, I love to mix it up with people like that. Taking care of the constituents' needs is really important, and constituent services would be something I will really sink my teeth into.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption.
Well, I believe that ComEd needs to do a much better job servicing customers. We were pretty fortunate up here. We only lost power for a few hours, but I know people who are out of power for days. And so we need to hold companies like ComEd accountable. They're essentially a monopoly here, and they operate, the privilege of, the people here in Illinois. And so we need to do a much better job of holding them accountable. And I too would work extremely hard in constituent services when I worked in Washington, D.C. for Senator Tom Daschle. That was really my focus, helping constituents in the state navigate the federal bureaucracy, get the services that they need. So I would certainly go to the mat for people in the district in dealing with companies like ComEd.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption, what can be done to ensure the state does not go after financial resources at the local government level to pay its bills?
Obviously, Springfield is looking for revenue wherever it can find it. And I've heard of certain proposals where they're looking to the local municipalities to get money for items that were unfunded in Springfield. And I think that we need to come up with more creative solutions than basically going to municipalities to find revenue for programs such as the pensions that were unfunded. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is in terms of finding other revenue sources to help fund, for example, the pensions and balance the budget. We need to look at public-private partnerships where we could potentially generate royalty revenue that could be dedicated to meeting the state's funding needs. The other thing is we need to work on growing our economy and creating jobs. If we have an expanding tax base in this state, that's going to generate revenue to meet the state's needs. And we need to be very conscious of our municipalities and their needs.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison?
I bet that question was directed at school districts, because I've heard that there are, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, there is a concept that school districts are a place that the state might be going to ask for some help in paying teacher pensions that are not fully funded. I was at a meeting in Highland Park last week, and I heard the school district representatives stand up and yell and scream, "No, don't do this to us. We can't afford it." As a local municipality who's got a budget, who does a levy, who does an extension, I think that the state should not be looking to local municipalities to make up for their mistakes.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison, what steps would you take to have the state pay bills to providers promptly?
I hear stories from vendors and different people who are owed money by the state that they eventually end up calling their legislators and saying, "Please, please, please, do something for us. You don't understand how bad our situation is. You've got to get some money to us or we're not going to be able to stay in business." That shouldn't have to be the case. I would have a panel develop a priority list of those businesses and the debts that the state owes, and have it very uniform and fair with complete disclosure across the whole state as to what money is owed to whom and in what order it's going to be paid.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption?
Well, again, I think the fact that vendors and service providers of the state have not been paid is just another example of how the state's finances have been mismanaged. It's unfair to those vendors, and it's unfair to the people of the state. A couple of things that have been proposed. I know there's been a proposal to basically go out and borrow to basically pay off the unpaid bills, which now I think are around $8.5 billion. I'd be open to that consideration. While I'm not a fan of new borrowing, I'd be open to that consideration, because what many people don't understand is we are paying interest on those unpaid bills to vendors at rates that are double-digit rates. If we go out and borrow the money, we can borrow it significantly lower than that, but I'd only favor that if we had a near-term we would only borrow for 5 years, be amortized evenly over time. But going forward, we need to get our state's finances in order. We need to spend only what we have.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption. Yeah. Mr. Sumption, what can be done to ensure ComEd performs according to the new smart grid legislation?
Well, I think in order for them to conform, there needs to be significant oversight. In following that legislation, I wasn't necessarily in favor of it, because I think one of the things that I opposed is ComEd was asking for a rate of return that I felt was far greater than it deserves as a public utility, a public monopoly. As I said earlier, I've spent time in the world of finance. I've analyzed companies. I know how to read their income statements, their balance sheets, their cash flow statements. And I think that they didn't deserve the rate of return that they were fighting for in that. So we need great oversight. We need greater disclosure to make sure that we know how they're allocating their resources to live up to their obligations in that bill. So really two things, significant oversight and greater disclosure with regard to their activities and how they're allocating capital.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
The smart grid, it's a shame that we got to this point, because I believe that on my ComEd bill and yours too, every month there is a portion that is supposed to be put aside for maintenance and restoration and improving of the system. Apparently that didn't happen. We do have regulatory organizations in place that have to do a little bit better job. They have to be the squeaky wheel. We expect them to let us know as residents, as people who pay taxes, and as people who are paying for our ComEd bills when they don't perform.
Thank you. And Ms. Morrison takes the last question before we do the summary. Please explain your position on a woman's rights to make a decision about her body and her health, and whether you would support any legislation that would alter or restrict the current rights afforded to women.
Oh, I think a woman's right to choose is under fire right now. If you've read the papers lately, there is legislation that was introduced in Springfield last week, and in Virginia, an abominable one, and I hope we don't see that one materialize. That being said, I would be a strong proponent of keeping a woman's right to choose as her absolute right, and I would be in favor of protecting that at all costs. I also believe that affordable health care, including women's health care, needs to be available to every woman.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption.
I support a woman's right to choose. I think that proponents of a woman's right to choose have fought long and hard for that right. We need to continue to fight to protect that right. It is under fire in a number of different places in our country. But in addition to that, I do believe that we need to provide all other medical services that women need, mammograms and other testing to early detect potential illnesses, and we need to find the resources to provide those to everybody. Because as I said earlier, one of the ways we're going to be able to manage healthcare costs going forward is wellness programs, early testing, to address illnesses, potential illnesses, early before they get to a critical stage and they cost us more money. So I support a woman's right to choose.
Thank you. Mr. Sumption will give the first summary. Each candidate has 1 minute.
Again, thank you to everyone who took the time to come out this afternoon. Thanks to the League of Women Voters. I would say a few things. One is, as I said earlier, I'm running because I think we can do better here in Illinois. I think that we have a lot of potential as a state, but I don't think we've reached our potential, and we can do much better in Illinois. I believe I have the right background to be a catalyst for positive change. I've spent over 15 years working in the private sector. I have a unique combination of public and private sector experience. I actually have a couple of endorsements. One is from the Independent Voters of Illinois and Independent Precinct Organization. And then today I'd like to announce also I've been endorsed by former U.S. Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle, who believes I have the right experience, the right integrity, the right leadership that Illinois needs now. I'd appreciate your consideration and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
I also want to thank the audience for coming out on a nice Sunday afternoon. I think it's great that everyone's engaged and is really paying attention this time. I'm running for state senate because I have seen what a truly dedicated state representative or senator can do and the impact they can have on the people and the communities that they live in. The next state senator that you send is someone you are trusting with your vote to make some very important decisions for you, things that are going to be effective in your workplace, things that will happen at your dinner table, in your home, and in your schools. I have worked for 15 years to represent the voters that trusted me with their vote and with this position. I've got the experience, the leadership, and I'm 100% committed to going to Springfield and making things better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we please have a nice round of applause for your candidates? All right, we're going to roll. This is the primary race for the 58th state representative. It's the Republican primary. Your two candidates are Mr. Neerhof and Ms. Turelli. And lest you think that I am unaware, I would just tell you that the league policy has always been that we don't use honorifics. We don't use titles. So for example, if there's ever an incumbent, we would never refer to them as senator or judge. Likewise, doctor, for example. Your candidates have drawn. I hope everyone is aware. I'll just say, if you're wondering how people are asking questions, put up your hand. Somebody will bring you a card, write it on the card, put your hand up, they'll take the card, and eventually, if it is not a personal attack, not a duplication, and we have time, it will make its way to me. So we will start, no further ado, with the opening statements, 1.5 minutes each, and we will start with Mr. Neerhof.
Thank you very much. I want to first of all thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I think this is a very important service you are providing to the community. My name is Mark Neerhof, and I'm an attending physician at North Shore University Health System. I'm also a clinical associate professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. I'm also an executive board member of Docs for Patient Care, which is a nationwide organization of 4,000 physicians that are committed to responsible healthcare reform. I've lived in the district for 21 years. My wife, Betty, who is in the audience, and I lived in Deerfield for 15 years, lived in Lake Forest now for 6 years. Should you elect me to go to Springfield, I'm going to have three priorities. Number one is Medicaid reform. Number two is pension reform. And number three is to eliminate the Democrats' tax increase to keep taxes as low as possible, and to make Illinois as favorable of an environment for business creation as possible going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli.
Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Turelli. I, too, am seeking the Republican nomination for state representative in the 58th District. Thank you to the League and the women putting this on today. I think, as well, it's also a great public service. And hopefully you will leave here today knowing a little bit more about Mark Neerhof and I as candidates, and you can make an informed decision starting the 27th of February. I have lived in this area all of my life, as has my husband. We are raising 3 sons. This is the community we live in, that we work in, where we attend church, where we volunteer. It is the community that I want to represent in Springfield because I don't believe we have been adequately served in the past. I believe very strongly that our state needs comprehensive pension and Medicaid reform. Far too long, we have built up our unfunded liabilities. We have built up a backlog of bills which we need to start paying off. In addition, I am a former high school teacher. I'm also a former pensions consultant. My job was converting major Fortune 500 pension funds into 401ks. I know something about business. I have been a business leader and a business owner for the last 10 years, and I know how to create jobs. I need you to send me to Springfield so that I can turn it around. Thank you again for coming today, and I look forward to the debate.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli takes the first question first. Should there be a timeline for pension reform? Why or why not?
Well, I think it needs to be immediate. Currently, there is before the House Senate Bill 512, which was put forward by by House Republican leader Tom Cross and others from the Senate. It offers 3 possibilities for current and future employees. They can take less money and get the same rate. They can pay into the system more for less, or they can convert their funds into a 401k type of system. We have, almost $85 billion in unfunded pension liabilities, and we need to act on it immediately. The first thing I will do when I'm elected is to put a bill forward to reduce and remove not only the legislative benefits in terms of pensions, but to reform if Senate Bill 512 does not pass.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof.
Yes, there should be a timeline, and the timeline should be now. We have 2 major drivers of debt in Illinois. Medicaid is our greatest short-term driver. Pensions are our greatest long-term driver. It needs to be addressed right now. I, too, think that SB 512 is a good bill, but it's a good start. The problem with SB 512 is that 2 of those 3 options that Ms. Turelli just described to you allow the legislators to manipulate those pension funds. For example, they can make cost of living adjustments to increase the pensions. That's how we got into these troubles to begin with. We have to take our pensions out of the control of our legislators, and we need to put it into the control of the individual employees. And that's both not only for the good of our state and our financial status, but that's also for the safety of the employees, so that this type of thing doesn't happen again. And we need to move toward a defined contribution type program.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof takes this question first. Let me ask, how's the sound out there? It's a little echoey up here.
Echoey.
It's a little echoey. Okay, guys, it seems to be better on that side and echoey over there.
I have a point of interest, actually. How many cameras are going? Because I'm seeing cameras that are not Lake Forest cable.
Actually, we did not discuss this beforehand in a little bit of a kerfluffle with the league. So thank you for your question. And let me state let me tell you what we're trying, and then we need the candidates' agreement. So, sorry, we'll make this little stop here. Here's what we decided last week, that we would allow videotaping by anyone if they're doing it from their seats and pretending like they're at their kid's school performance or something and not in anyone's way, we tape by the league in its entirety. You've got your cable folks doing that. That will be posted in its entirety, and no candidate is allowed to use anything in their own literature that comes from the League of Women Voters. That's a long-standing rule because of our nonpartisanship. So we thought we would give it a try. These are new days. As I said when I opened, we used to say turn off your pagers, and now everyone has a cell phone that will videotape. And we thought we would try simply allowing it as long as no candidate uses anything from it in their campaign. But I realize I've sort of blindsided the candidates with it, and so this is an interesting experiment in openness and transparency. Let's have maybe 15 seconds for each candidate to weigh in if you're interested, but I am going to make the executive decision and take the fallout, as I can assure some of you I have done before. Broad shoulders here. Yes, Mr. Neerhof.
Are you experimenting on me?
Shouldn't probably say that to a medical doctor. Yes, I am. We tried it last week, and everyone is still standing, just for your information.
You have my permission.
Pardon me?
You have my permission.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli.
It's fine by me. Just
Okay.
wanted to make sure I knew what the rules were.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that you pointed it out. And just to say, everybody, go home and follow your blogs, okay? Because there's a lot of people in Lake County very interested in this, and that's part of why we decided to try this new policy and see how it goes. And we're very appreciative. All the candidates are very much in agreement. They know our rules, and they won't be using this for their campaigns. And so go to it. Have your friends over, don't bore them with slides, show them scintillating debates. And we appreciate it because we want to get the word out. So now, of course, I'm completely kerfluffled here. I think that we just finished the timeline question, and I have not asked you about income tax, correct?
I don't believe
I
so.
think if I'm back on track here, Mr. Neerhof, is the state tax increase working? Why or why not? And what is your solution to paying the state's bills?
Well, if you want to lose jobs in Illinois, it's working. Since the tax increase went into effect last year, we lost over 100,000 jobs. People going to other states. Our tax environment here is lousy. It's not working, it's counterproductive. And we've already spent the money just on pensions that we took in. And we probably won't take in as much money as we expected to. Should we consider a progressive income tax? The answer is absolutely not. If you want to be counterproductive, and if you want to be further injurious to business creators, that's what you should do. The idea here is to, number one, be fair to everybody, number two, to increase tax revenues, and number three, to grow businesses. So absolutely not on a progressive income tax. Number two, keep the taxes as low as is possible. And number three...
No, I'm sorry. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Ms. Turelli?
Well, obviously, the tax increase was enacted to give needed revenue to our state government, yet we are still behind in our bills. So that tax increase didn't even cover our bills. I'm not in favor of a tax increase. I would vote to repeal the current tax increase because, as Mark said, we're driving away businesses. We need to encourage businesses to come. In addition to tax decreases, we also need to change workmen's compensation. We need to get jobs here so that that revenue becomes more positive. We in this state don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And because of the tax rate to both corporations and individuals, we are in the mess that we're in.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli takes the next question first. If elected, would you support any changes to existing state abortion laws? In particular, would you support a sonogram law such as that recently passed in Texas?
I don't honestly know what the law was in Texas. Can you elaborate at all?
I don't know enough about it to elaborate, so let me just make this a broader question and say, would you support changes to existing state abortion laws, or would you continue them at the level would you continue them as they are?
Well, I don't believe, and I've been on record before saying that I don't believe the government belongs in the healthcare decisions of anybody, let alone making legislation to that effect. I think individuals can choose for themselves what they want to do with their own doctors, and I don't think that in this state of the economy that we need to be poking our noses into any other issues other than the fiscal mess.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof.
First of all, I think unless we solve our economic problems, that any healthcare issue is going to be immaterial because we're not going to have the money to pay for any healthcare. Secondly, as far as this whole debate is concerned, I think we're looking at this from the wrong perspective. We're looking at this as a pro-life and a pro-choice perspective. From a pro-choice perspective, there are very few Jan Schakowskis out there that are okay with termination at any point. There are very few people who would oppose terminations even to save the life of the mother. I think we should look at these things that we can agree on and bring people together rather than driving them apart with this dichotomy. An example of that is parental notification. As a physician, I can't imagine doing any procedure on a young woman without getting parental notification. And that is the type of thing that I think the great majority of people in this audience could agree on.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof takes the next question first. Springfield is centralized with Senate and Assembly leadership. How can you break through embedded leadership to make your ideas heard?
I think you need to send the right people to Springfield. I think those need to be people who stand on principle, who are going to stand up and aren't going to be afraid to face their leaders. This is true in the Republican Party as well as in the Democrat Party. We need people to go there with principles and live by them when they get there. And I think we also need to have people who are not going there intending to be there full time. We're supposed to be citizen legislators. That's how we were originally intended to be. And that's why I think when we go there, we shouldn't have pensions. I don't think we should expect to be there full time. It's when you're there full time that we get the result that we did of the last year's legislature, where we have over 200 new laws coming out of the legislature just last year.
Thank you.
Did they improve
Thank you.
that?
Ms. Turelli.
I agree with everything you've said, but to elaborate, I think, and in speaking with people in Springfield already, it's about bringing your expertise to the table and making your way and making your voice and your principles heard in those various committees that undertake new legislation. In my example, it would be education, it would be pension experience, and it would be, I'm sorry, I already said education. Education, pension care, pension reforms, and jobs, business climate. So I think the only way you bust through leadership or you bust through various caucuses is by showing your expertise and bringing it to the table.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli, how would you reform Medicaid? Specifics, please! Exclamation mark. Cut services, cut compensation, cut access?
Well, first of all, given the current state of the state, for Medicaid, like everything else, I think everything needs to be on the table. There have been several pieces of legislation that have been passed into law but not enacted by the governor. This includes things such as identity cards, using identity cards to track users. It also includes eligibility requirements. Under the Blagojevich administration, the Medicaid rolls expanded by millions in terms of dollars and tens of thousands in terms of patients. So the first thing we need to do is roll back that eligibility and ensure that those that are on Medicaid are those that are those who it is intended to serve, those in the safety net. Because right now, Medicaid is the #2 expenditure on our budgetary list for the state of Illinois. Unless we trim that back.
Thank you. Nicely done there. Mr. Neerhof.
The fundamental problem is the state government is not a health insurance company, and it's got to stop acting like one. And it's because it is, and it's extremely ineffective and inefficient. That's why costs are spiraling out of control. $8 billion of bills in Springfield unpaid, $2.5 billion are Medicaid. That results in physicians not accepting patients from Medicaid, lack of access to care, and poor outcome. Ms. Turelli went on record with a press release earlier this week saying that she agreed with Governor Quinn that we should cut some more, and then cut some more again. What that's going to do is just add to the inaccess to care because of unpaid bills. It's going to hurt people. We need to make Medicaid a program where we provide premium assistance, which is means-based, so that people can get their own private health insurance.
Thank you.
Do I
Mr.
get to
Neerhof.
respond to that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
May I respond to that?
Actually, let me give you 30 seconds.
Thank you. I did come out in a press release and say that I supported Governor Quinn's call for cutting $2 billion from Medicaid. That's almost 20% of the budget. I support that because the Republican side of the House has been talking for years about cutting Medicaid expenses. So I absolutely supported that idea. And I think that unless we cut, once again, unless we start to cut and put everything on the table and find those efficiency solutions, we are going to be farther down the road in terms of costs and money that we don't have to support those who need it most.
Okay, I'm going to give a 15-second wrap, and then we'll start on our next question. 15 seconds, timers.
We're already not paying our bills. If you add a $2 billion cut, that just means $2 billion more of unpaid bills. That makes no sense. It's going to harm access to care, and it's going to harm patients.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof takes this next question first. Wisconsin just stripped collective bargaining rights of most public employees. Would you support similar actions in Illinois?
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate? You don't have to.
I think that what was done in Wisconsin is appropriate. And I think that the end result of that is that they saved a lot of money. There were horror stories told about how many teachers would be laid off, how many kids would have problems in their classroom and so forth. Guess what? None of that happened. No teachers were laid off, and in the end, they had a budget surplus. So do I support that type of limitation here? Absolutely, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli.
I support limits to collective bargaining. I think far too often the role of the unions have surpassed those of individuals, and the rights afforded from collective bargaining agreements has outweighed the rights of the individuals that pay for it, namely taxpayers. So I do support limiting collective bargaining rights.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli. What do the candidates think should be done to get interstate traffic off of US 41 and onto I-94?
Well, short of everybody riding a bicycle, I'm not exactly sure. You know, we've had a lot of, in recent years, Senator Garrett has done quite a bit of work to try and get trucks off of Route 41 and free up the traffic. I can tell you that going east or westbound on Route 22, Route 60, or 176, particularly at traffic times, is not where you want to spend your time. I do believe that the county needs to look to expanding Route 53 and to take some of the pressure off of the other arterial roads, namely Route 41. Thank you.
Mr. Neerhof.
Well, if we gave some of those lighted cones to Governor Quinn and had him stand at the intersection at the Eden Spur, directing people to 94, it might work. I don't know the answer to the question. Should we look at eliminating the tolls on 94? Could work. I'm certainly open to exploring that. Honestly, I don't know the answer.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof, what are your top 3 legislative priorities?
Number 1 is Medicaid reform. Number 2 is pension reform. And number 3 is eliminating the Democrats' tax increase, keeping the taxes as low as possible, both for individuals as well as for corporations, and making Illinois a better place to do business by enacting real workmen's compensation reform and eliminating fees and regulations as much as possible to make Illinois a better place to do business. We heard from our Democrat Senate candidates before saying how good of a place Illinois is to do business. Well, that would come as some surprise to the hundreds of thousands of employers or employees who have left Illinois because of its being such an unfavorable work environment. We have to make this, it is a great place to live.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli?
My 3 legislative priorities, as I mentioned earlier, include Medicaid and pension, comprehensive reform to both of those. I also think, to go back to my pension answer earlier, there are 5 different pension systems in this state, and each one needs to be looked at differently because of contribution levels and sizes and everything else. We also need to look at COLA levels, and reducing or eliminating COLA as an automatic benefit to pensions. We also need to perhaps cap them. So pension and Medicaid reform, jobs, creating jobs and hoping and enacting reforms so that jobs come to this state instead of leaving us. And as I mentioned earlier, education reform.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli? Many elected officials have outside jobs which often provide a conflict of interest. Do you plan on being a full-time public servant, or will you keep another job?
Well, as I said before, I think one of the beauties of state government is that we have experts in various fields that become elected to go to Springfield to serve as a citizen legislature. I've said that for the last 2 years that I ran for state rep last time, and I've said it now. It's a key cornerstone of my campaign. I want to go to serve the interests of my neighbors, my community, and to do what's right for the state. I will do whatever I need to represent the interests of this entire district, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, you name it. We're all in this together. So I intend to go and represent everyone. I do have 2 businesses. I do have partners in those businesses which are willing to share the burden while I am in Springfield.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof?
We were intended to be citizen legislators. We've gotten away from that. Every minute you have a legislator in Springfield, your money is at risk. We have to start thinking differently, where we solve the problems that are before our constituents and then go home. I think it's important that legislators work for a living so that they know the impact of the policies that they pass. If you're in Springfield full-time, if that's you get your pension from Springfield, you have every motivation to do whatever you can to keep your job. I have every motivation to do the right thing. And if I come back from Springfield because I didn't vote the way somebody wanted me to, but it was the right thing to do, I can live with that, and I'll be happy practicing medicine.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof, do you favor the expansion of gambling, a casino in Lake County?
No, I do not. We have to look for real sources of long-sustained revenue. We need to get our revenues from businesses, and we need to make this a more attractive place to do business so that we have employers coming here rather than leaving here, and that their employees' income taxes are providing a steady stream of revenue. For us to continually look to expand gambling and casinos is just ill-guided. We need to have a stable economy, a stable workforce. That's where our focus needs to be, not on gambling.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli?
I agree. I think the expansion of gambling has been a financial Band-Aid, which is, the adhesive is worn off. We have over 10 gambling facilities in this state. I don't think we need another one. And as Mark said, we need to turn to real, concrete solutions to get out of our fiscal and budgetary mess rather than Band-Aids such as gambling expansion.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli, is there adequate oversight of utilities regulation by the state government? How would you improve it?
It's a good question. You know, you have the Citizens Utility Board, which tries to work on behalf of consumers. I don't believe, given what we've experienced this last summer, where we personally were out of power for 4 days, that there has been enough oversight of our utility companies and what individuals pay to them and the services we get in return.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof?
Well, rather evidently not, because we're experiencing the failures that we are. And I think oversight and continued monetary contributions to maintain our system is what we need to do in the long run to make sure that we don't get into this position again.
Thank you. I'm going to run us over a tiny bit on this one, and then we'll grab a couple of minutes from the next one just because we had our big video discussion. So where am I here? Mr. Neerhof. Specifically, how will you help small businesses grow? What legislation can be introduced or resources expanded to do this?
We get out of the way. And we need to create a favorable business environment for everybody, and to treat Motorola and Sears and whomever, Caterpillar, differently than we do small businesses is morally wrong. 90% of the businesses in Illinois have 5 employees or less. And where do they go when they're being mistreated? The answer is no different for small businesses than large businesses. Everybody should be treated equally. We keep taxes as low as possible. We do workmen's compensation reform. We eliminate the fees and regulations wherever possible and make this a more favorable environment for everybody to do business, not just the big businesses.
Thank you. Ms. Turelli?
Again, I agree with everything Mark has said. I would add to it that in many of the businessmen that I've spoken to would like to see some sort of public-private partnership. They have jobs available, but they don't necessarily have those people as candidates who can fill those jobs. Some don't know how to read. Some can't follow the instructions on a manufacturer's piece of equipment. So I do believe I'm a product of the University of Illinois, which has had some of the finest examples of public-private partnerships leading to pharmaceuticals and hybrid seeds and you name it. I would like to see our community colleges put to use as retraining devices in partnership with large corporations such as Abbott or even the small mom and pop organizations which make up 6 million, I think, in this state, 6 million businesses in this state. I think we are missing an opportunity by not putting those two together.
Thank you. And Ms. Turelli will take this last question first. What steps would you take to have the state pay bills to providers promptly?
It's a great question. It's one of the reasons I said I supported Governor Quinn's cuts for $2 billion. I think if we can use that money to start to pay back our backlog of bills, especially to doctors and other providers, and once they see some money coming back to them, more doctors will be willing to take on Medicaid patients. It's a mess. We have to do something.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof?
You can't cut money that you're already not paying. You just can't. So that's only going to worsen access to care. And that question is intriguing to me. How can you pay bills on time? Well, number one, you do what everybody in this room does. You don't spend more than you take in, and you pay your bills. How can that be hard? Government is doing too much. That's the fundamental problem here, and we're getting lost because government is doing too much. And then we end up with questions like, how can we pay our bills on time? That's silly. Don't spend more than you take in and pay your bills on time.
Thank you. The candidates each now have 1 minute to summarize, and we're doing it in reverse speaking order. So Ms. Turelli will go first. 1 minute.
Well, thank you again for being here, and to all of you who are listening and trying to make a decision as to who you should vote for in this Republican primary. I do believe that you have two candidates here with different motives, with different backgrounds, and different ideas for reform. I am the candidate that will bring reform, needed reform, to pensions and Medicaid, to education, and I will create jobs in this state. I will work with the legislature to repeal taxes, to make a more friendly business environment and pro-growth business policies to corporations. We can't lose any more of them. I ask you to vote on March 20th or sooner, again starting February 27th. I am available for questions. I answer my own emails and my own phone, and I would look forward to any comments or additional questions that you may have. Thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Neerhof.
I will not create jobs because legislators don't do that. Small businesses do. Businesses do. I'll get out of the way as a government so that they can. There has never been a physician elected to the Illinois legislature. Medicaid is the leading item on our budget. It's woefully mismanaged, and it needs radical reform, not just tinkering around the edges. We need a physician in the House. Incidentally, we also need a physician in the Senate in the form of Ari Friedman, and he deserves your support. He and I are of the same mind and want to do the same thing to bring needed health care reform to Illinois, both for Medicaid as well as for health care in general. I ask for your support to help me do this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Thank you. Could we please have a big round of applause for your candidates? This next and last race is for Lake County Board District 13. The astute among you, and I think that's everybody because not everyone shows up on a Sunday afternoon, will have noticed that we've got two parties mixed in here. They are not sitting by party. They drew lots just like the other candidates did. And so use your little baseball card here to keep track who's in the Democratic primary, who's in the Republican primary, so you know maybe whom you are listening to a little bit more carefully. It is exactly as we've done before, just slightly more complicated, so we could expect me to have shenanigans maybe twice during this when I forget who was up next. But we'll start up with Mr. Glueckert. We'll give his opening statement. We'll move right down the line, and then Mr. Solar will answer the first question first. We'll wrap around, then Mr. Lesser will answer the second question first so that everybody gets at least one opportunity or two opportunities for a first bite at the apple, and then we'll start at the far end and work this way for our summaries. I've got, it looks like a nice stack of questions here, but if anything occurs to you during this debate, in case you're not aware, put your hand up, you'll get a blank card. Hold the card up, someone will come and get it. It goes to our sorters in the back who just make sure that it's the appropriate level of government, not a personal attack, not duplication, blah, blah, and then it comes up to me, and if I have time, I will read it. So, great to see a nice turnout still hanging in there for the third race of the day. Here we go with an opener from Mr. Glueckert.
I'm going to jump right in here. Good afternoon. My name is Bob. The last name is Glueckert. I'm 51 years old, a resident of Lake County for about 30 years. I have two grown children, a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old, both of which have been educated here in Lake County. I've been a private, this is a new venture for me in terms of politics. I've been a private business owner, an entrepreneur up here. I'm looking to join the county board to turn around and not only represent the 13th district, but to also turn around and promote the interests of the county in general in terms of not only reducing taxes, but in terms of bringing in business.
Thank you. Mr. Solar.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Solar. I'm not a career politician. I've never held a public office or ran for one, for that matter. I've been a resident of Lake County for most all of my life. I'm a family man. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Jacqueline. We have 2 children together, James and Grace. I believe that I stand apart because of what I've done the past 20 years. I'm a United States Navy veteran with an honorable discharge. I serve my country that I love with honor and distinction. I'm one of a select few U.S. Navy deep-sea divers. I'm currently a lieutenant with the Waukegan Fire Department, where I've worked since 1997. As a firefighter paramedic, I've put other people's safety before my own on a daily basis. My life's work has saved people's lives as well as their homes. Countless times I've made a difference in people's lives when it matters the most. So you may ask, why am I running for county board? I'm stepping forward to give the residents of Lake County, especially District 13, a different choice than your typical cookie-cutter politician, per se. Public service is my calling. I've proven time and time again that I'm good at it. And I can say with complete confidence that if elected, I will serve the citizens of Lake County District 13 with the same dedication. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser.
Thank you. My name is Rick Lesser. I'm also not a professional politician. I'm a small businessman and an attorney. I've been a community leader for a number of years. I've been on the Lake Bluff Village Board for the last 8 years, where I think I served very well, but also uncompensated. I've been president of 6 different civic organizations, none of which paid any money to me. I've been president of Lake County Bar Association, the LakeForst-LakeBluff Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club, and several other organizations. As such, I've always put the interests of the business community, tried to view government as being a partner with business, particularly when I was on the village board here in Lake Bluff. I always did very best to try to view the businesses as being our constituents. And the result was, I think, great success here in Lake Bluff. We have currently 100% retail occupancy. We should be the envy, frankly, of most other areas. And I think that if I got on the county board, I would bring the same approach and the same sensitivities to the county level as I did in the village of Lake Bluff, and I hope we would have similar results. I also think that, first of all, jobs and job creation is the #1 need in Lake County. The county board does not create jobs, but it can empower people to do so. We also need to maintain good fiscal discipline. It is critical that we not spend more than we take in. We have a AAA bond rating, and I want to see us keep that. Finally, I think I'll be a good representative for everybody in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hart.
Hi, my name is Sandy Hart, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this event and to all of you for attending. I have a BA, a little bit about my background. I have a BA from the IU School of Business and an MBA from DePaul. I will bring a strong background in business and community service to the board. I worked at Kraft Foods for over 14 years and managing a $4 million budget and developing strong business skills. I also worked at the assessor's office, and I understand the property assessment process and the tax implications. I serve as the Vice President on the Lake Bluff Park District Board and am on the Lake Forest Hospital Women's Board. I was the lead chair for the successful Lake Bluff School referendum, and we are very proud of this beautiful LEED certified school. On a personal front, I've been married for 14 years and have 3 children. I have 3 priorities. First, I will set up business and residential roundtables. We must ensure that Lake County remains competitive by attracting and retaining businesses and providing jobs in a critical tax base. I am committed to working with business to stop the flow of jobs over the border. Second, financial accountability and transparency are crucial. Tax dollars must be spent effectively, and there are always ways to find efficiencies in the budget. Property taxes have risen year over year, and we must alleviate the tax burden. Third, I am committed to the preservation and continuation of our open space policies. The forest preserves make this a special place to live, which is why I voted against a golf course at Fort Sheridan to preserve this incredible property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen.
Good afternoon, everyone, and my thanks as well to the League and for all of you giving up a portion of your President's Day weekend to spend it here with us. I think it's incumbent on anyone seeking an office and any of us to give specific reasons why we find ourselves more qualified than someone else might be for this particular position. In my case, I would give you 4 reasons. One is what I feel is a strong record of accomplishment where I've held prior public offices, 16 years in the state legislature from 1981 to 1997, as a member of the village board for the last 8 years, including 6 years as its finance chairman, and in Schelhas Township, helping to bring about the reform of that unit of government, cutting the property tax by 30%, and as a private attorney, helping to reverse 2 property taxes that had exceeded Illinois' property tax cap limit. Second, my familiarity with all of the area that we seek to represent as a result of having represented it for at least 10 of the 16 years I was in the legislature. Third, a long history and involvement with private and public conservation issues which relate to the Forest Preserve District. And fourth, a detailed vision for the future of Lake County government with position papers on a variety of specific issues that I'm sure we'll get to talk about today, ranging from the budget to Winchester House to Route 53 and 120 to the Forest Preserve District and so forth. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Solar takes the first question first. How can we improve or increase public transportation in the county?
Lake County isn't Chicago, obviously. That's why most people, or Cook County for that matter, that's why most people choose to live in this neck of the woods. I think the public transportation right now is it's doing all right. It's serving its needs. Expanding it when we have shortfalls and the services that are already in place are not being, the buses aren't full, the trains aren't overloaded, there's empty seats. So expanding on that, I don't think really is Lake County's role or main priority. The main transportation problem would be 53 needs to be built. That doesn't go with public transportation.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser?
Build Route 53. The problems in Lake County should be fairly obvious. We have a super highway that dead ends at Lake Cook Road. That should be fairly obviously a large part of our problem. If that road was expanded through to the north and tied into Route 120, then traffic would flow much better. We would find much better economic development along that corridor. Now, there are some conservation issues along there. There are some wetlands that are important, but that can be ameliorated. The road can and should be built. That is the essence of our problem, in that everyone in Lake County needs to drive east and west in order to get to I-94 or to get to 41, because our only north-south highways are located at the eastern end of the county. If we had Route 53 going through the center of the county and flowing in an intelligent traffic flow, we would find a lot less transportation problems in Lake County, and I think we would see a corridor of development open up, which we are desperately in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hart?
I think in thinking about public transportation, we're talking about more than just Route 53. So Route 53 is critical, and it must be built with the environment in mind, which I believe the Illinois Tollway Authority has a specific council to work on those issues, because as Mr. Lesser spoke to, there are critical wetlands in that area. Excuse me, but public transportation is something that everybody must look to. It has to alleviate congestion, just as Route 53 will do, but we could be working with area businesses like what happens right here in Lake Bluff as they move people from the train stations and to their business locations from, say, Chicago. But we also have to increase our public transportation opportunities for residents and people who work here as they move east and west as well. So I think working with area businesses and looking for any opportunities to increase public transportation is a good thing.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen.
Yes, the question, of course, did have specifically to do with public transportation. The county has a relatively limited role. The county board and the county board chairman appoint or have a role in appointing the local representatives to both the RTA board and the PACE Suburban Bus Board. Those individuals report periodically to the county board, and we need to hold them accountable and make sure that they're being responsive to the county's needs. There are public and private associations in different parts of the county that deal with transportation issues generally, including mass transportation issues, to make sure that the mass transit services are coordinated with the bus services in some cases that the larger employers provide, and the county has a potential oversight role there. There is, in addition, a coordinating role that the county plays to some extent already that should be enhanced, having to do with paratransit.
Thank you.
I see the stop sign, so I'll hold it there.
Mr. Glueckert.
I'm going to agree with two of my opponents here on the board. I agree with Mr. Lesser, Build 53. We can keep reducing, we can keep trying to bring down taxes, we can trying to bring down the rate, but at the same time, we have to turn around and bring new business up here. One of the core bases that a government is supposed to bring to its residents is infrastructure, and one of those infrastructure issues is improving the existing highway system. We're gridlocked going east to west, and we have no alternative as far as a second loop coming around the outside. And with regards to what Mr. Barkhausen had to say, I agree with him as well. We have the RTA, CTA PACE issue up here. I think we need to turn around and evaluate those programs and take a look at what the cost is versus what the usage is, and see whether or not these are economically feasible to continue, what should be increased, what should be decreased.
Okay, Mr. Lesser, we'll take this next question first. And I've actually pulled another one about 53 since the previous question was a bit broader. So those of you who've addressed it may not want to, may not have something significant to add. But this is a more specific question. What should be done about Route 53? Should it be extended, and how would it be funded?
The only way to fund Route 53 is through the Illinois Tollway Authority. That's the only agency that really has the funds and the wherewithal to get the job done. The road, as I just said a moment ago, obviously needs to be built. You know, I go out, I have a daughter at the University of Iowa, and we drive out on I-88, which is a fairly similar kind of a tollway going through DuPage County and through Kane County, and you see lots of new development along Route 88, Interstate 88. You see lots of new buildings, lots of businesses operating there. We would have a similar development in Lake County if we could only build Route 53. Now, the county board cannot do that in itself, but the county board has done an excellent job and needs to continue to lobby the Illinois Tollway Authority and lobby in Springfield to get the road built. The number one thing that they've done is they've at least done a referendum, and the referendum showed great support. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hart.
Yes, I am in favor of building the extension. 76% of voters voted yes for that Highway 53, and the Illinois Tollway Commission did form a group to make sure that that highway is built in a way that relieves congestion and improves mobility, but it does have to make sure it doesn't impact neighboring communities, the wetlands in the area, and there are also some organic farms that are right near that roadway. In terms of paying for it, I agree with Mr. Lesser, that has to be done through the Illinois Tollway Authority, but it is expensive, approximately $2.2 billion, I believe, over the last projection, and there will still be additional land that needs to be purchased because from what I understand, only about 70% of the land that is necessary has been purchased.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen.
Well, this has been an issue for 40 years, and it came up when I was in the legislature. I voted to authorize the building by the Tollway Authority of the northern extension of 53 as well as the southern extension. The southern area being more populous, that portion of it was built, and 53 to the north has been held in abeyance. There is currently, as has somewhat been alluded to, there's a so-called Blue Ribbon Advisory Council under the aegis of the Illinois Tollway Authority, made up of county representatives, business and labor representatives, representatives of environmental groups, and they've been meeting for several months. They met just last week They have 5 different alternative designs that they're debating, and they're links to their deliberations and plans on my website, barkhausenforlakecounty.com. And so this is an ongoing issue, and those of us running for office and possibly being elected to it need to be cognizant of what's already being done and to help to advance their work.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert.
Well, I may have already jumped the gun in terms of that answer. I'm in favor of building the Route 53, and I'm in favor of the Illinois Toll Road, essentially providing the funds for it.
Thank you. Mr. Solar.
Well, it can be tough going last when everybody else agrees before you. I have the same position. 53 needs to be built. The tollway authority needs to pay for it. When it's built, it will take cars off of the existing roads that we're using right now. There's no other way to go north and south but 41 and 94. So when 53 is built, there will be some relief. The tollway needs to do it. Lake County Board has little to no impact on that. All we can do is put pressure on the people that make those decisions.
Thank you. And I know it can be difficult with 5 candidates. Sometimes when you're the last one, there's not that much to say. But audiences love brevity, so don't be afraid to just say that, what she said or what he said. We'll get more questions in. Ms. Hart takes the next question first. Given limited funding, what would you cut? Land purchases, forest preserve maintenance, programs, museum hours?
And I just have to clarify, you're only speaking about the Forest Preserve budget, not the overall county budget?
I guess I have to assume yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yes, Forest Preserve budget.
Okay. Thank you. Approximately 3% of the dollars that are paid into Lake County go towards the Forest Preserve, and I believe the benefits that we get from those dollars are tremendous. So I am actually not in favor of cutting in the Forest Preserve. We had a referendum that passed, and it was an overwhelming majority of residents believed that we should continue to purchase land, and so by law, we must do so, and this is the time to do it. Most of the land that is purchased is farmland, so it does not add much to the tax rolls. So when we purchase that tax land, that benefit goes directly to the residents who live nearby. I am absolutely in favor of continuing to use our dollars wisely and purchase land that makes sense for the Forest Preserve at a time when we can get the most for our money.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen.
Well, I'm a great fan of and frequent user of the Forest Preserve District properties, but the figure that represents the percentage of the county budget represented by the Forest Preserve District is actually 30%. It's a big number. And so we need to see if things can be done more efficiently and strengthen partnerships with other organizations and agencies, whether it's the Department of Natural Resources, the various private organizations that exist, like Bluff Open Lands, like Forest Open Lands, and so forth, to try to achieve greater efficiencies. There is, I have got a 2-page position statement on my website about the Forest Preserve system that, for one thing, they need to put their budget and their capital plan on their website. It's one of the few local governments I can think of today that isn't fiscally transparent in that very fundamental way. So, but I encourage you all to take a look at my position paper on the subject.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert.
I'm a small business owner in Lake County. I'm also a property owner in Lake County. I have had to make some tough decisions on a business level in order to keep my bottom line profitable, and I've had to make some tough decisions on a personal level to make my bottom line profitable. I don't know that there's any specific area that I could look any one of you in the eye at this point and tell you I think needs to be cut or limited. What I can look you in the eye and tell you is that every program needs to have a fresh set of eyes, look at it and evaluate it, and decide whether or not this is feasible to continue or not.
Thank you. Mr. Solar.
Was the question which one of those would I cut from?
I think it was a more general,
Oh, I
pick one
thought
of
you
these or
listed-
something else. Let me read it for you again. And by the way, you can always ask me to repeat a question. I'm happy to. Given limited funding, what would you cut? Land purchases, forest preserve maintenance, programs, museum hours? I'm sure if there's something else that occurs to you, you could fill in the blank.
Right now, as everybody knows, Lake County government is even-keeled. They're not spending more money than is coming in. But if there was shortfalls, which there most likely will be, if we are in a recession, I'm not in favor of cutting anything that's going to cut people's jobs. If we can't buy 100 more acres of farmland, then we'll put that off. But if I'm going to cut some services and put some people out of work, that's not going to help our economy, and it's not going to help citizens of Lake County. So I'm all for buying land, but I think we need to buy land as the county grows. The county's not growing right now. There's not a lot of houses being built. There's no more subdivisions going up. But I'm not saying we shouldn't buy any land at all. I'm just saying as it grows and we have the money, we buy land then. We need to have open spaces, because when we have open spaces, it takes a burden off of our infrastructure, and that's the best way to do it.
Mr. Lesser.
I remember very well riding my bicycle up the Des Plaines River Trail and coming up to the great opening of Independence Grove and seeing this huge, beautiful vista that our forest preserve has here in Lake County. We're lucky to have this. We've done a great job, and the public is widely supported, acquiring new parcels of property, and we've got a great deal already bought and currently held by the county. What we need to do at this time is to learn how to use those properties, and most importantly, how to reduce the expenses. I want to give you one good example right now. We have a separate Forest Preserve Police Department. Why this can't be done through the Sheriff's Department, I don't quite understand. It's obviously an inefficient way to run an operation, to have a separate police department just for the Forest Preserve. I certainly would like to take a close look at that one, because that strikes me as being an opportunity to save some of the taxpayers' money.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen takes this next question first. How can the board solve the problem of flooding on Route 41, which sends traffic to jam Green Bay?
I'm not sure what stretches of 41 that you're exactly talking about, but flood control is an issue with which I had considerable experience in the legislature. I helped to pass the enactment of the Stormwater Management Commission back when we had the major floods. Those of you who were around living in the area in 1986, that particularly affected Gurnee, an area that we seek to represent. And so I served as a village board member. I served for a couple of years as a stand-in for village president Tom Skinner when he was the head of the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency as our village representative of the Stormwater Management Commission. That's where the county's role can be most effective in addressing the problems of flooding and flood control. And having experience with the Stormwater Management Commission, that's where I'd put my focus.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert.
Not being a road engineer, I guess my first comment would be fix the dang pumps, if there's a problem. More importantly, though, I think that question falls back on what we were talking about with regards to purchases and the Forest Preserve District. One of the things that the smart purchases that some of the Forest Preserve District has made has been in expanding the natural wetlands area that surround the Des Plaines River, which in fact creates that flooding when in fact there's development that comes there. The Forest Preserve District has done a great job of adding to that wetlands, which has significantly reduced the amount of flooding in the area. Has it resolved 41 and the extra traffic on Green Bay? Doesn't sound like it has. But more smart purchases, like in returning some of those wetlands back to wetlands, I think would be a good allocation of the dollars that the Forest Preserve has.
Thank you. Mr. Solar.
I'll be honest, I'm not an engineer, so I couldn't tell you how to fix that, but it is an obvious problem. It's always a problem when there's heavy rain, and it needs to be addressed. The roads in all the county need to be fixed, the bridges, and these, I think, need to take priority, because we have to start with our base and our core is our infrastructure, our roads. And the traffic and the roads around here are terrible. You go across the border into Wisconsin, and they build them to different standards. We need to hold the engineers that are building these roads for us to the highest standard and stop building them at the lowest bid. They're building them for the minimum number of cars when they should be building them for the highest level of semi-trucks. None of us like riding behind them or being around those semi-trucks, but without them we can't get goods to our stores and everything else. But my answer is the roads need to be fixed. That road, all of them.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser?
Yes, it is certainly true that every time we get a big storm, the viaduct under 176 and also the viaduct under Deer Path flood. This is very unfortunate, but the more unfortunate part of it is it's a U.S. road, it's not a county road. And the county board really can't do anything about that road. I wish we could. One thing I suppose that we could do is to lobby our best to get some federal dollars to improve, to put some pumps in there, because yes, it is a regular problem, but unfortunately it's not something that's within the county's jurisdiction.
Thank you. Ms. Hart?
And I think I'll just take your question a little bit broader if I can, and think that you're not just speaking about just 41, but about any area or road that has to do with county roads. And I would agree with Mr. Barkhausen that we really need to be working with stormwater management and trying to see what we can do about those areas that are of the most concern. I believe it was a couple of years ago that there were several areas that really could not leave, where people could not leave their area because all of their roads were flooded. So we have to invest in our infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we have pipes and controls in place to alleviate that problem.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert takes this next question first. What should be done with the Fort Sheridan Golf Course? Should a course be built? And if so, how would you fund it?
I am not in favor of building the Fort Sheridan Golf Course. While there is a concern with regards to liability or lawsuits that may develop as a result of that, whether it's from individual homeowners or potentially from the government that has deeded this property to us, I don't think that we're going to lose that property. I don't think the Army's going to take it back. But I do think that golf courses in general need to be looked at. To add a golf course at this point on that particular property would turn around and not only lessen the amount of business that's going to the 3 county courses that are being subsidized at this point, we need to turn around, it'll turn around and affect some of the private courses in the area as well. I think we should look to convert that area into a forest preserve area. It's a beautiful piece of property, and move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Solar?
If I was a career politician, I would tell you what you want to hear, but I'm not. The deed says the property shall be a golf course and recreational open space for the attorney, basically, in accordance with the Fort Sheridan Joint Planning Commission concept plan dated September of '94. So I went back and dug it up and looked it up. That's an 18-hole golf course that they jointly decided it should be. The deed says, and this is legally binding, that there should be a golf course there. I feel that this land was given to Lake County for free. The county was willing to pay $10 million for it. It's valued at well over $50 million. Those poor, and I understand that these people aren't in my district, but I feel bad for the residents at Fort Sheridan there that have been promised this golf course for 8 to 10 years and they don't have it. We need to find a way to bid it out. If you look at it in the sense that we got a $50 million piece of property for free, we can find a way to build that golf course.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser?
Sorry. The number of rounds of golf played every year in this area drop and have been dropping consistently for over a decade. The golf course makes absolutely no sense as a practical matter. While it certainly is true, the county did promise to do this. But like a lot of promises that are made, sometimes if they can't be kept, then people should be compensated for that. Now, number one, I don't think that the Army wants the land back. I don't think they're going to take it back. Number two, the people who bought the homes there, the truth is their homes aren't worth any less as a result of not having a golf course and instead having open lands there. The property's worth the same thing. The truth is, they're not really being harmed by this. So I think that the course should not be built. I think it would be very bad for our Lake Bluff golf course, as well as for the other county courses, as well as for Lake Forest's Deer Path and Highland Park Sunset Valley, to build a new golf course there.
Thank you. Ms. Hart?
As I said, I was selected to participate in the Fort Sheridan Advisory Committee, and I already voted against putting a golf course there. I do feel for the homeowners that live there, and I will say it was not 100% of the homeowners that wanted a golf course, but for those homeowners who purchased their land hoping that that would be the case, again, they did not lose any value with having open space, and in fact, research shows that open space can actually add more value to an area home than a golf course. So most importantly to me, I believe that land is invaluable and unique. It is 258 acres of land right on Lake Michigan. It is absolutely beautiful, and I think it adds incredible value to the residents and visitors of Lake County.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen?
I'm going to save some time here by saying that I agree with 3 out of 4 of the prior speakers. And I've been on record on this issue opposing the golf course and actively lobbying county board members to oppose it.
Thank you. Mr. Solar takes the next question first. Should the county be allowed to use forest preserve land for other uses, such as wetland banking, road or airport improvements? I think we said at the start that I'm not from these parts, right, and don't vote in this election. I'm not sure if we're talking about wetland banking or wetlands, comma, banking. I think it must be wetland banking, right?
Sounds like wetland.
Let me read it again.
Must be.
Should the county be allowed to use forest preserve land for other uses, such as wetland banking, comma, road or airport improvements? Is that a...
I think I can answer.
There you go, Mr. Solar.
I don't think the county should give up any land that they currently have. And the only way that I could foresee doing it is, I know up in Waukegan, they're landlocked and they want to expand the airport. And sometimes the board will trade lands. When it's an entity like that, an airport, there's going to be somebody making a lot of money off that airport. So for us to go and do something like that, we would need to get at least double the size of land that we would be giving up to do that. But generally, it's a general question. So generally speaking, no, I'm not in favor of giving up our protected land, because we need these open spaces, because the more we're building, except for an example like the airport I said, the more of a burden it is on all of our infrastructure.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser?
We need jobs more than we need open lands next to the Waukegan Airport. I can't really foresee that as being a particularly beautiful spot, although there is a nice golf course near there, by the way, the county golf course. I would think that wetland banking, and I'm going to assume that wetland banking means that we're using areas of land as wetlands. That's perfectly compatible with forest preserve use. I don't see that as being a problem at all. I would not like to see us reduce the amount of forest preserve land, but I would be perfectly comfortable with the idea of swapping land next to an airport so the airport can expand in exchange for land elsewhere in the county, which could be used as forest preserve land. So I don't view that as being inconsistent. I think it's actually a pretty good idea.
Thank you. Ms. Hart?
I would also agree wetland mitigation and having wetlands in forest preserve property is important and is a key component of forest preserves. So I'm going to guess that perhaps maybe the question is around land swaps, and I do agree in land swaps as long as really the correct value of the land, not in terms of dollars and cents necessarily, but also in terms of the environmental impact of that land is viewed. So in fact, we on the Lake Bluff Park District Board did conduct a couple of land swaps with the Lake Bluff School District, one that was necessary for this very school to be built so that a detention basin could be placed on the golf course. And in fact, that land swap turned out to be an excellent move, not just for the school, but also for the golf course, because it really helped with our flooding across the course.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen.
So the mitigation of the destruction of wetlands has been a requirement in real estate development of all kinds for a long time, and mitigating it by means of adding to wetlands and forest preserves is a very, very logical thing to do, and of course helps with flood control. So I'm fully in support of that. I'm not fully aware of the proposal, as I gather exists, to swap forest preserve land for land that might be needed for the expansion of Waukegan Airport. But the Waukegan Airport is a vital part of the county's economic development, and it's a reason anyway, that companies like Abbott and Baxter and certainly others continue to value Lake County as a place for their corporate headquarters. And so we need to do what we can to keep that a vital transportation service.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert.
With regards to land swapping, in terms of jobs, if we can justify jobs that come in and we can find a comparable piece of property that the Forest Preserve can get its hands on in exchange, and that brings in 50 more jobs, I'm in favor of it. With regards to swapping land for wetlands, absolutely. Again, one of the questions earlier was about your flooding on Route 41, whether it's a state road or a county road. The reality is increasing those wetlands decreases the amount of flooding that residents see.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser takes the next question first. How would you ensure that the zoning, road maintenance, and similar needs of residents of unincorporated areas are met?
That's a very good question, because the county controls the zoning in the unincorporated areas, and our district includes a very large area of unincorporated Lake County, particularly out in the Gages Lake, Wildwood areas. I think that it's critical for us to update our zoning code. We have the current county zoning code is called UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, and frankly, it reads like it's written in the 1950s in many terms, in terms of classifications of businesses. And what it does effectively is force businesses, new uses, to come in on bended knee and ask for special use permits, rather than giving them good classification so that a business can know, yes, I have the right to operate my business in this area. We have too few classifications and too antiquated classifications. It's time to bring UDO into the 21st century. And if we did that, I think that we would find that a lot of our businesses would expand and operate, and we would have new small businesses opening in areas like Gages Lake.
Thank you. Ms. Hart?
The more that we can work with area businesses, whether they're in a municipality, which obviously the county does not have as much control over, or any control over, or in the unincorporated areas, that's very critical. And I think Mr. Lesser brings up an excellent point. We should always be reviewing the laws, the rules, and the regulations that either help or hinder businesses from coming to our county. The unincorporated area is an excellent area for opportunities for business, and we need to do everything possible that we can do to bring more businesses into Lake County and retain them as well.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen.
The significant unincorporated areas that we seek to represent, the Arden Shore subdivisions just north of Lake Bluff, and then the very large unincorporated areas up in Wildwood and Gages Lake are really completely residential, and the issues that we as a county board member would need to address and continue to be mindful of are adequate law enforcement, putting an emphasis on patrolling by the sheriff's office, enforcing the nuisance ordinance. The county has come up with a creative new way of handling nuisance complaints through an administrative procedure rather than requiring people to go to court. We need to see that is implemented in a way that truly serves the residents there. assisting with the creation and operation of Neighborhood Watch programs through cooperation with the Sheriff's Office, and water supply. As a legislator, I helped to create the Central Lake County Water District that extended Lake Michigan water to Lake Bluff for the first time and on to the unincorporated area.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert?
I live in one of the unincorporated areas on the far west end of this 13th district. One of my biggest problems as a resident out there goes back to the road issues that we talked about earlier. I live just on the north side of 120 where 120 narrows down to 2 lanes, and I experience on a daily basis a half-hour to a 45-minute wait between the light at Hunt Club and 120 and that first light on Mill Street after 120 is narrowed to 2 lanes. I sympathize with the people in Woodland Meadows, which is the subdivision just to the north of there that is now receiving traffic off of Hunt Club Road, cutting through that subdivision to try and get over to Mill to avoid that 20-minute to a half-hour backup. One of my first priorities would be to see where in the state we can talk, who we can talk to get that issue resolved.
Thank you. Mr. Solar?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again? I'm lost now.
I've been so careful in keeping the questions. It's being careful to protect the unincorporated areas, web, roads, et cetera, funding. Am I right? Right here. How would you ensure that the zoning, road maintenance, and similar needs of residents of unincorporated areas are met?
Next date, my running mate here, is that whole corridor of 120 going west from Almond Road is a bottleneck. It needs to be 4 lanes. It's not fair to everybody that lives west of there. It's the very farthest west point of District 13. That needs to be addressed immediately. On a county level of government, there needs to be less red tape. Somebody wants to go get a building permit, it doesn't need to take as long as it does. We still have to follow the rules and regulations to do things safely. But when government gets so big that it's so prohibitive to do building and do business in the county, why would anybody want to do that?
Thank you. Ms. Hart will take our last question. I'm trying to be cognizant of our timing here. She'll take it first, and let's give 30 seconds. I think I've selected one that could be kind of a short one, so let's give everyone 30 seconds so that we're starting on the summaries as close to 5 minutes too as we can. So Ms. Hart, in 30 seconds, what should be done with Winchester House? Closed, repaired, or build a new facility?
Well, I think right now, as we determine what to do, we need to be looking to the future. So right now, we may believe that there are enough beds at other nursing homes. With projections of baby boomers retiring and needing care, we need to make sure that we have enough beds for them, because those other private facilities will be filling up with people who can pay a little bit more than our Medicaid patients. So I am in favor of keeping it.
Thank you. Mr. Barkhausen?
I believe that the evidence shows, and the prior leadership of the Lake County Health Department, even though it was muted at the time, believes that the capacity in private nursing homes is adequate for the population generally and particularly for Medicaid-dependent patients. So I question whether the taxpayer should be having to spend $40 million for a brand-new facility under those circumstances, and I don't think there's another candidate in the race that's taking that position.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert?
I support building the new Winchester House, and I support the county board's decision in hiring an outside contractor to provide the services there.
Thank you. Mr. Solar?
I think we need to take care of our elderly community. It's a fact that America's not just America, but Lake County's getting older. I'm a paramedic. I go into these other private nursing homes, and you're comparing apples and oranges when you're talking about Winchester House. I think we need to take care of our own. The Lake County Board voted 21-1 to build it. The money's there. It's funded by
Winchester House has been providing care since 1947 for our community, and I think it's an important part of our community. It is self-funding. It has not been costing the taxpayers money, and that's something that we should continue to do. The problem, obviously, the problem is that there just aren't enough Medicaid beds in Lake County. And until that happens, I certainly don't want to see, in the middle of this recession, to see elderly people thrown out with no place to go, I think would be a horrible result. As long as it can be self-funding, we should keep it.
Thank you. Now we're going to have each candidate give us a 1-minute summary, and we're going to reverse the order from the first speakers. So we'll start at the right with Mr. Barkhausen, and then we'll work our way this way, and Mr. Glueckert will be the last speaker. Mr. Barkhausen.
Well, my thanks again to the League for hosting this forum this afternoon. I end where I began by asking the question that I think should be asked of all of us is how is it that we can represent the people of this district perhaps better than the other candidates here? And I offer, again, reasons in my case along an extensive record of providing leadership on fiscal and tax issues at the legislative level, the village board level, as chairman of the finance committee, at the township level, in reducing the township's property tax by 30%, and as a private attorney, reversing the impact of 2 property taxes that had exceeded the Illinois property tax cap law by 80% and 30%, a long history of involvement and interest in the forest preserve system, and a series of detailed position papers and statements on the key issues that are and will be before the county in the coming years.
Thank you. Ms. Hart.
I'd like to again thank the League of Women Voters and for all of you for staying and attending the forum today. I'm running for the Lake County Board because I care about the issues affecting our quality of life. I am prepared to bring my financial expertise, community experience, energy, and passion to make a difference on those issues. I'm committed to effective and responsive county government, and I will be a strong voice on your behalf. As your Lake County Board member, I will put my background in business and my understanding of local issues to work to strengthen the job market in Lake County, use my experience with government budgeting and property assessment to make smart, fiscally responsible decisions, and continue my commitment to environmental issues and preserving open space. I am proud to be endorsed by State Senator Susan Garrett, State Senator Terry Link, State Representative Karen May, former State Representative Lauren Beth Gash, and current County Board members Ann Bassey and Michelle Feldman, and I ask for your vote in the primary election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lesser.
I'll thank the League as well. Thank you very much for coming out here and putting this show on this afternoon. I also like to thank Patch, by the way, who I think deserves credit as well for putting on this forum. I'm not a professional politician. I'm not getting a pension from the state government. I'm not collecting money from the township. I've never been paid for any of these things. I am a small business person and a lawyer, and I believe that there is a lot that can be done on the county level to improve our situation, particularly for jobs and opportunity here in Lake County. You know, for many years, Lake County had an unemployment rate that was much lower than the rest of the country. Now we are higher. Now we're at 9.3, and the nation is at 8.5. We need to turn that around. We need to change that. I think that if I got on the board, I could help in doing that. Now, I also think that the county needs to maintain its fiscal responsibility. We need to keep that AAA credit rating. We are the envy of the United States. I mean, how is it that the county has a better credit rating than the state? I'd like to help with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Solar.
I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the event today and the Patch for coming out. I especially like to thank those of you that decided to stay for the lowest level of government that is here to speak today. It's funny, I go door to door. Most people don't even know what Lake County government does. I tell you, look, I don't have the resume that anybody else does. I'm not part of any political machine. I'm just a regular guy. I'm a Navy vet. I've been a fireman for almost 15 years. A vote for me is a vote for thinking outside of the box. A vote for me is a vote for changing the face of politics in Illinois. It's taking the first step towards restoring some type of integrity to Illinois politics. Thank you for your time, and God bless America.
Thank you. Mr. Glueckert.
I'm the small business owner, folks, bottom line. Been up here for 30 years, looking to turn around and carry the same type of decision-making that I made to make my business profitable, to continue making fiscally responsible decisions on the Lake County Board. I think we need a new, fresh set of eyes. A set of eyes that didn't come out of any endorsements or any kind of background in politics, just like you are, coming in there, taking a look, taking a fresh shot at it. I think I can offer that, and thank you for your time today.
The candidates have agreed to sit for a minute while I do my thank yous, and the first thing that I would like to do is thank your candidates. A big round of applause, please. And I'd like to say something about that. I love to come up here to Lake County and moderate, and I don't think I've ever gone away with a bigger impact than I have today with the knowledge, the local knowledge that your candidates have, their compassion, their ideas, their commitment to the local area, particularly your county board people. They're going to stay right here. They don't get to run off to Springfield and hide, or run off to DC and hide from you, right? And I say this these days at the end of every day that I do a round like this. It takes a lot of courage these days to put yourself out there and run for office at any level. So I would like you once again, please give a big round of applause to these candidates and the ones we had earlier. I'd like to thank the Lake County LakeBluff Patch and Jim, who kicked us off today. We always appreciate it. There's nothing like the power of the press, and you'll be able to have a look there and get some coverage of today. Show it to your friends. Also, this elementary school, did you people know they are up for a LEEDS certification? They are so green. This is a fabulous facility, and it takes some time to coordinate to allow people to come in on a Sunday, so we appreciate them very much. You had your cable guys are here on a Sunday afternoon. It takes a lot to put this together, and you're here. So a round of applause for you, and I'm not done yet, but let's clap for you before I get carried away. Jane is going to say a word after I do, but I want to say, she pointed out that the league is 92 years old this year. 92 years ago, in 1920, in Chicago, the League of Women Voters was formed 6 months before the 19th Amendment passed to give women the right to vote. And for about 40 years now, men have also had the opportunity. We just didn't change our name. It's kind of like the NAACP. When you think about what the letters stand for, maybe you cringe a little bit. But we've been around for a very, very long time. We stand for something important. And one of the things that we like to say is we are the group that rolls up our sleeves and we do the hands-on job of democracy. One of the things that your local league has done is brought you this excellent forum today. It's going to be taped. It's been taped. It's going to go up for broadcast. You have your little sheet here. Be sure you take it with you. Your local league's website is on here. They also have bios from all of the candidates posted, and they will have this posted in full, and also the schedule of when this is going to be run on your local cable access. They register voters. They do informative programs. Look around today. We had timers. We had people checking the cards in the back. We had a gorgeous young woman, I don't see her right now, running the cards up here to me in the front. Somebody made these name cards, right? And somebody got here early, somebody arranged with the school, somebody sent out to the candidates for their consent form. This is a league that really does do that. They roll up their sleeves. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to help promote an informed and active electorate. And I think you shouldn't be prouder of your League of Women Voters here. I know they've got membership material out there. This is not my league, but boy, this is your league, whether you're a member or not. But where is that membership information? It's on the table in the back, am I right? It's on the table near the front door, and you can also always get onto their website and find out from there. So I think March 20th is the primary. Friends don't let friends not vote on Election Day. Talk it up. We want everybody to know about this, and I'm going to turn it back over to your local league co-president, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And I want to ask you to put aside some time the next 2 Sundays, because next Sunday is the U.S. Congressional meeting for your candidates in the primary. It's going to be in Highland Park at the Highland Park Country Club. And then the following one will be back here locally, and that's for local. And then I would also encourage you to come to our program on March 22nd. It's going to be on water. And I think water is a subject that should be of interest to all of us. Thank you for coming.